Vanakkam. I'm Vayoni Dimel. This is Boston Lanka News, bringing you news, views and entertainment from Boston and USA. Lakshman Kadiragamara. What if he was alive and remained at the helm of Sri Lanka's foreign policy making? Venerable Maduluwewa Sobitha Thero, is he the candidate who will run against Presdient Mahinda Rajapaksa? Sri Lanka should develop political and economic relations with the North Indian states, says Shanaka Jayasekera. How could we avoid another UN resolution? Dr. Dayan Jayathilake shares his views. Lakshman Kadiragamara was a giant in the eyes of many Sri Lankans who single-handedly steered the Sri Lankan foreign policy when Sri Lankan voice was not heard much in the global arena. Ever since his brutal assassination in 2005, those who have admired Lakshman Kadiragamara have often imagined what Sri Lanka would have been like had he remained at the helm of Sri Lanka's foreign policy making. According to the political commentator Kalada Senaratne, Kadiragamara would have forestalled post-war external interventions and led Sri Lanka to an acceptable domestic resolution of our crisis by working with our moderate middle. Many Sri Lankans still remember how Kadiragamara fared the well-known BBC Hard Talk interview and made many Sri Lankans proud for his courage and his eloquence.
How do you feel as an ethnic Tamil yourself
Yes.
to be so reviled by a group of Tamils?
Well,
the Tamil
I see it like this. At birth, I was given a label. And if, having been given that label, the LTT, nobody else, the LTT wants me to accept and approve everything that they do. The suicide bombers, the child soldiers, the political assassinations, the extortion of ordinary
But how does it
people.
make you feel? You've got to
I'm
go
coming
around
to that. I'm coming to that.
security
Before I
guards
tell you what
all
I
over the
feel, let
place.
me give you my rationale. Now, if being opposed to all that makes me a traitor, which is what they call me sometimes, I am absolutely delighted to accept that appellation. I do it with pleasure.
Kadiragamara was one diplomat who did not fear to say the truth in the global forums and to say it truthfully and credibly.
There can be no argument that terror in all its manifestations must be fought relentlessly and globally. But the LTT is committing more dastardly, more heinous crimes against Tamil children. It brazenly kidnaps them or lures them to its cause by glorifying and romanticizing war.
As Senaratne writes, Lakshman Kadiragamara would have realized that the best and the morally correct way of neutralizing external threats to our country is by doing ourselves what needs to be done to build a reconciled and united Sri Lanka from the ashes of a horrifying war that is now mercifully behind us. Sri Lanka misses late Lakshman Kadiragamara more than ever at a time like this when Sri Lanka faces many challenges in the international forums and in the global arena. Venerable Maduluwewa Sobitha Thero to come forward as the presidential candidate opposing Mahinda Rajapaksa? This is a notion some have floated around these days. This significant political development has gained momentum this month when many political groups and civic organizations came together at a meeting of the National Movement for Social Justice at the Colombo Public Library Hall on Wednesday, August 15th. Although there was no explicit reference to Venerable Maduluwewa Sobitha Thero's candidacy, according to political sources, a substantial and growing number of political organizations and individuals have begun to promote his candidacy as a presidential challenger to Mahinda Rajapaksa. According to some political observers, Venerable Sobitha can rally the support if he positions himself as the candidate who will contest to seek a mandate to abolish the executive presidency, and pledged that other than that one single issue, he will not have any political ambitions and will not attempt to run the country. Sri Lankan foreign policy officials have to pay more attention to India and need to develop new relations with Indian state governments and players who have a favorable relations to Sri Lanka, says Shanaka Jayasekera, an expert of Sri Lankan foreign policy matters. Shanaka Jayasekera joins with Boston Lanka to discuss more on this. Shanaka, you have a very interesting suggestion for those who make Sri Lankan foreign policy decisions. You think Sri Lanka should counterbalance the Tamil Nadu influence by developing political and economic relations with North Indian states. Is this something the Sri Lankan government is already working on, or is it something nobody has any interest?
Well, as you know, the Tamil Nadu political leadership is playing petty politics for domestic consumption within Tamil Nadu by inflaming the separatist ideology for the Sri Lankan Tamils. So this is, and one of the changes that are taking place in Indian politics is that the regional parties are becoming more influential in coalition governments and can influence the union government policy-making process. So given that we are not going to get any sympathy or any favors from Tamil Nadu, it is very important for Sri Lanka to counterbalance the influence that Tamil Nadu has on the center. And this is why I have said that Sri Lanka needs to cultivate a relationship with North Indian states. We need to establish consul general officers in states such as Andhra Pradesh, Orissa, West Bengal, Uttar Pradesh, Maharashtra, Gujarat, and try to encourage preferential economic trading arrangements with those chambers of commerce that Sri Lanka has preferential agreements and arrangements and a relationship with the North Indian states. That would influence the way those representatives would be able to speak on our behalf when it comes to policymaking roles, policymaking decisions in New Delhi. At the moment, I don't see any strategic initiative focused on North Indian states. And this is why I say that we really need to focus our attention to counterbalance the negative influence that Tamil Nadu has on the center.
You advocate the engagement of the Tamil diaspora organizations. What do you mean by that?
Basically, during the reign of terror by the LTTE, almost all Tamil diaspora groups were under the dictatorship of the LTTE representatives in each country. But today, the situation is much different. Today, Tamil groups have more freedom, and there is a sense of pluralism amongst the opinion makers in the Tamil community. Therefore, the government needs to encourage these groups to engage in being participants in the development process, because what the Tamil diaspora is looking for is avenues to engage and be part of the rebuilding process in the north and east. At the moment, they don't have any channels through which they can support that kind of engagement. while it is very important to be to monitor and have surveillance on what is taking place, given that some organizations can be unscrupulous and try to rebuild a ground capability for fledgling LTTE. While keeping that in mind, and we must still make every attempt to engage with the Tamil diaspora community so that they can be part of the development process in the north and east.
Sri Lanka's ambassador to France, Portugal and Spain and permanent delegate of Sri Lanka to UNESCO, Dr. Dayan Jayathilake, joins with Boston Lanka to share his views on how Sri Lanka should address the concerns of the global community related to Sri Lanka. Dr. Jayathilake, how could Sri Lanka address the concerns of the international community so that we don't have to face another UN resolution?
Yes, I have very, very clear ideas about that. I'm unhappy about the resolution, and I think the resolution contains a trap which we must not fall into. The trap is there are some people within the system in some countries, and also some elements, radical elements in the Tamil diaspora, who want to make the point, who want to prove the point that Sri Lanka is either unwilling or unable to engage in reform and in reconciliation and move on accountability. They want to make that point that we are not capable of doing it ourselves. And if we prove that point for them beyond reasonable doubt, then they move to the next level. And the next level is to appoint an international inquiry mechanism and then produce a report which will be worse than the Darusman panel report. And then take that, bring that from Geneva to New York and maybe send it to The Hague. And who knows where it will go. To the EU Parliament. I mean, it will come to Capitol Hill. So, in order to escape that trap, I have said we should learn an example from a fellow Asian country with a Theravada Buddhist cultural matrix, by the way, in case somebody says, this guy is quoting Western examples. And this is the example of Myanmar, which was under far worse pressure than Sri Lanka has ever experienced. But they got out of that trap. I mean, there are still residual sanctions and so on, but they turned the whole thing around by engaging in internal reform, democratization, opening up, liberalization, political dialogue, reconciliation with political enemies. I mean, they've undergone a huge makeover. They've cleaned up their act, and they've undergone a makeover together with their regional partners in ASEAN. And the result of this is that Myanmar, which was in the doghouse internationally, is going to be the chairperson next year of one of the most respected and successful regional organizations anywhere, and that is ASEAN. They're going to take over as chair next year. This is because they got their act together and cleaned up their act while they were getting it together. And this is what I think we should do. I think we should implement to the fullest our own LLRC recommendations, but we should not move 1 inch beyond them. The resolution wants us to go beyond that. I don't think we should go beyond that. I think we should implement the Sri Lankan constitution to the full in all parts of our country, including the north. But I don't think we should go beyond it. And that's what I think we should do. And then you will find that in the United States, that is something we can sell. That will fly if we have proven, if we have demonstrated that we are capable of our own reforms which we thought up. It's our commission, it's their recommendations, it's not from the United States. And if we show that it can be done, then I think we can get out of this whole situation. And we must have the slogan, yes we can, and we must prove that. To borrow from Obama and Cesar Chavez, si se puede, yes we can, and that we can reform, and we can show that. And we don't have to bow our heads to anybody, but we should not adopt the policy of an ostrich and say, bury our head in the sand and say there's no problem. No, they'll come and get us like the ostrich. Burying your head in the sand doesn't prevent the lion or the tiger from coming and getting you. So we should be smart. We should use what Professor Joseph Nye, Professor Emeritus at Harvard, whom I was fortunate to meet and talk to in Paris, but he's been talking about soft power and smart power. Not only reliance or over-reliance on hard power, which is military power. He says, that doesn't do the job. You need soft power, and soft power he defines as the ability to convince others, the ability to appeal to others, and the optimum combination of hard power held in reserve as the last resort, not the first resort, and soft power, the ability to convince, is what he calls smart power. And I think we lost in Geneva because there was a huge erosion of our soft power capabilities, and we've not been exercising much smart power either. Hard power, yes, we did the job, and that's done, but now we have to win the peace having won the war. And the way to do that is to do what Joe Nye is talking about. He says, finally what matters is whose story wins, whose narrative wins. Right now, our narrative won in Geneva in 2009, but it didn't win this time, and globally it is not winning. Our narrative is not winning. It doesn't help to come on, just too strong. It has to be the truth told credibly, and which is independently verifiable and credible. Our story, the Sri Lankan story, our narrative, has to win in what is a battle of narratives, as Joe Nye says. And Boutros Ghali, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, said there's a new global superpower, and that's world public opinion. So we have to win that battle for world public opinion. That cannot be done by lobbyists. I mean, in the United States, and you know that. You see lobbyists coming, people run because these are seen as mercenaries. It can't be done. It doesn't be done by us. We have to tell our story truthfully, credibly, and we have to have a good story, an attractive story, a true story to tell. And we have to write that story ourselves, starting now.
That concludes our news edition. We meet you again with another news edition of News, Views and Entertainment from Boston and USA. Till then, goodbye.